Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to MPG's Mental Health Awareness Series number 15, today on Tuesday, April 29th. I'm so excited to have Dr. Sally Attia with us. She's coming back to talk to us about stress management and awareness. So Dr. Attia specializes in helping clients combat trauma and negative thinking, and she's got extensive training in treating PTSD, addressing anxiety, depression, and abuse. And in this session tonight, she'll be addressing the signs of overstress and its physiological, physical, and mental impacts. So with that, Dr. Attia, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Sister Samia and Sister Lemia, for this opportunity to present um, such a important, I think, topic, especially in today's political climate and with what's going on generally in the world. I think it's really cool that you guys have this going on in MPG, because mental health is very important, especially to me as a therapist, and also as a Muslim. Alhamdulillah, like our mental health is very, very important, especially nowadays. So this is such a broad topic, so I'm going to try to simplify it and generalize it as much as I can. So let's get started. So let me just define what stress is. Basically, what is stress? It's our natural response to a challenge or a threat or some kind of danger. It's really embedded in our nervous system. It's a nervous system response. That's what stress is. And we kind of feel it, right? It's kind of hard to define, but I think it's more of a felt notion rather than, something that can be fully explained. But it is a sense that we've all experienced and continue to experience throughout life. So there's good stress and there's bad stress. I'm sure you guys heard of that, right? Um, so what's a good stress? For example, a good stress would be like, planning a wedding, you know, um, or planning like a big party or something. It gives you stress, but in a good way. There's a positive end result. So you withstand it, and you're able to um, go forward with it despite the stressful feelings it gives you. The bad stress, for the purpose of this presentation, is what we're going to focus on, which is called distress. Of course, you've heard the expression, this person's in distress. Um, so what are some causes of stress? It could literally be almost anything. It's kind of like whatever, it could be whatever, right? And also, it depends on an individual's temperament. What stresses me out, for example, may not stress Sister Samia out, or Sister Lemia, or vice versa. But most of the time, what causes stress in our lives is work. Our jobs usually are a very common cause of stress. Relationships of all kinds, um, financial issues, like money problems, for example, and health concerns. Okay. And of course, there's an array of all kinds of things, and almost anything really, depending on the person and the situation, can cause stress. So there's different types of stress: acute, chronic, and traumatic. So whatever causes stress, the medical term we have is a stressor. So an acute stressor is something that would happen, immediately, short term. For example, like a work deadline. Your boss tells you, I want this on my desk Monday morning, and it's like Friday, before you leave for work. Like, so that sense that you feel, your nervous system kind of gets, activated. Or, you're a student and you have an exam to study for, and the test is Monday, and you're nervous about it, and you have to cram and get a lot of information in. That could be a stressful, like an acute stressful situation. Um, there's chronic stress, which is, you know, what it's like acute stress that's like happening every day pretty much to someone. For example, a stressful job, you know, anything that it subjects you to long-term threat to your nervous system, let's say. For example, I looked up what are the most stressful jobs, um, and I was kind of surprised, but not really, when I did the research that they were, for example, law enforcement, um, airline pilots, um, doctors, of course, and lawyers, and 911 operators, and retail store workers undergo a tremendous amount of stress. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Um, so think about it. Do you have a stressful job? Many of us do. Um, and it's that long-term exposure to it. Um, and then there's traumatic stress, which results from a major life event or trauma. Of course, what's happening in Gaza is of course traumatic in all sense of the word, but a lot of stress happening there, unprecedented actually. Um, and another example would be like natural disasters, those fires that have been happening to people, put a tremendous amount of stress, or any kind of natural disaster that happens. uh, Extreme poverty causes stress, or poverty in general can cause stress. Um, War, things like that are considered traumatic stressors. So the stress response, what are the stress responses? You guys probably learned this in high school, the fight and flight mechanisms that happen with our nervous system. This has all happened through evolution. You probably remember the teacher telling you, when we were cavemen, the theory is we were chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and our brains evolved to learn how to survive. And, we automatically went into this activated response of fight, fight the tiger off, or flee, or flight, run like heck to save your life, right? So these are, subhanAllah, naturally embedded in our nervous system. Um, so the flee response is more, it kind of describes what anxiety would look like. When something is very stressful for some of us, we don't realize it at the time because it's automatic, but we kind of want to avoid, you know, or you sense danger and you want to avoid, maybe somebody looks kind of shady, and you're in an elevator alone with this person, and there's an instinct that tells you, no, you need to leave this space right now, or anything, I'm not going down that street. I feel a little bit uneasy about it. That's a flight response, you know. The fight response is, the very activating, where you feel very powerful in a moment of stress. I don't know if you guys heard of I think this happened in the 80s or something. There was a story of a woman whose child was pinned under her car by accident, and she lifted the car because she was so activated at that time that the stress response made her that powerful to save her son. Um, there's another one called freeze, which is kind of like a numbing response. This is also like, these are all, these are all descriptors of, any kind of perceived threat. So depending on you, depending on the situation, one of these four will occur. The freeze one is where you kind of go numb. You go numb in order to preserve yourself in a way. So that could be also a traumatic response to things as well. I've seen many clients where they've been through a lot of trauma and they just go numb, and that's what they call a freeze response. And then there's fawn, which is kind of like, it happens a lot when we see abuse. where people just kind of cower to an abuser or to a perceived threat. So they kind of become like a too agreeable, like a people pleaser, just to, again, enable their survival. So these are all like, uh, protective mechanisms that are in store to ensure our survival. So that's what we that's what we term the stress responses. Okay, so what are the physiological effects of stress? Now, again, this could be even in good stress. There's an increase in cortisol, adrenaline release, heart rate, and mental alertness. So, cortisol is a stress hormone that gets released, and there's like a 90-second spike, actually, and with cortisol when we're stressed out. It goes up, it peaks, and it goes back down within 90 seconds. So it's really the stories we tell ourselves that will like renew it for another 90 seconds. But physiologically, usually a stress response initially, especially with cortisol, it usually lasts about a minute and a half. Okay. Um, then the adrenaline is like that part in the fight response where you feel, very powerful. Like, somebody's threatening you, something stressful is about to happen. You immediately feel this surge of energy and surge of power. Of course, your heart rate goes up and mental alertness also can go up just so that, we stay hyper vigilant. Um, Okay. So these are considered like the negative consequences of stress, especially long-term stress. These are the physical effects. So, you might suffer from headaches, muscle tension. A lot of people feel it in their shoulders, in their neck, when they're highly stressed or have stressful jobs. A lot of times, people will feel it in their bodies. um, Fatigue, you feel exhausted all the time. Some people unfortunately get high blood pressure. It's a real thing, and from prolonged stress, heart disease can form. A weakened immune system. There's a lot of studies out there that link, autoimmune diseases with a weaker immune system. As a matter of fact, the word disease is actually comes from the term dis-ease. So when we're ill at ease, right, we're stressed, you're not at ease. So it forms a disease, dis-ease. So there's that correlation, subhanAllah, of body and mind. Um, and then, of course, many people get digestive issues when they're stressed. Like our gut is actually considered our second brain. There's a lot of neurotransmitters actually that are formed in our digestive system. So again, the mind and body connection is there. A lot of times when we're stressed, we can feel it in our bellies. Some people get bloated or diarrhea, constipation, all these things can be happening just due to stress. Or actually an acid reflux is very, very common with stress. Um, and of course, sleep disturbances, like you might have trouble falling asleep, or maybe some people sleep too much. And these are just some general negative sequelae of being in a stressed out environment over time. So as a therapist, this is my niche right here is the mental and emotional effects of stress. So this is something that myself and I'm sure all the other therapists see on a daily basis. Like this is stuff we talk about with people all the time. And of course, we're human, we experience this ourselves. There are so many mental and emotional effects of stress. Before we were saying that, back in the day, there was that saber-toothed tiger that chased us in our evolution, and that's why we became stressful. Well, now, when's the last time we had a saber-toothed tiger chase us, right? Not happening anymore. But it could be an email now, that like stresses you out, or a phone call or like an interaction with another human. So these things happen, and they can be quite challenging to deal with at times. And back in the 70s, actually, there was a change in the medical model that, psychiatrists used to examine you, diagnose you, things like that, where they kind of just looked at you before and then looked at your biology and then just diagnosed you with whatever symptoms you had. But I think it changed in the 70s. I forgot the name of the psychiatrist, but he said that there's actually more to a human being than just their biology and their symptoms. It's their environment as well. So therefore, now we do what's called a biopsychosocial model that we follow when we do evaluations on people. So these are some risk factors with long-term exposure to stress, and vice versa. These things will also cause stress. So anxiety and depression um, are definitely, huge risk factors for, going through a lot of stress. Um, Irritability and mood swings, a lot of times what's happening is that we're telling ourselves a story when we're stressed. Sometimes we tell ourselves a story, and that can make things worse. So we're much more susceptible to those types of occurrences when we're stressed out, and we can get ourselves literally worked up over things. So we might be a little bit more irritable. Difficulty concentrating when we're stressed. It's very, very hard to focus. Um, some people get overwhelmed. A lot of times, I have clients that'll describe this to me, how things are just, all over the place and they have so much to do and there's a lot on their plate. And, what I hear is this sense of overwhelm. A lot of us are just overscheduled, I think. There's just a lot to do. Um, Withdraw from social interactions. When you're stressed, you don't feel like hanging out and being with your friends or socializing. It's difficult to do those things. So if you find yourself withdrawing from that, maybe ask yourself, are you stressed? Is there something, bothering you? Is there something underneath the surface there? Procrastination happens when we're stressed. You don't feel like doing certain things either. You don't have any motivation to do those things. You put off things. It could also be due to that feeling of overwhelm as well. Um, and finally, some kind of dangerous risk factors also are these last two, the being at risk of substance abuse. Unfortunately, a lot of Muslims suffer from that. And this is considered like a negative coping mechanism, as well as the change in eating habits, either under eating or overeating, as a way of like coping with the stress. But, it's really a maladaptive way to cope with stress, right? But these are the risk factors of it. So let's talk about what we can do about this. Um, Unfortunately, we cannot live in a stress-free world. I wish I could do that. I wish I could just wish you all a stress-free life. But that's not possible, unfortunately. And so stress is just something we have to learn to live with, right? And so these are just some tips I have here listed to help us cope with that, whatever's going on that's stressing us out. Something that is extremely helpful is exercise, um, physical activity of any kind, really. But for example, taking a walk, even if it's 5, 10 minutes, sometimes is just all you need. Sometimes you hear people say, I just have to walk it off. Um, it actually, exercise or going to the gym, it does more for your mind than, well, it does just as much for your mind as it does for your body, believe it or not. So I've seen this in myself. I've seen this with clients all the time. Like as soon as we suggest that they go take a walk or like exercise a little bit or do something physical, they always, I mean, almost always report feeling better. Um, yeah, you're making you're kind of like metabolizing some of those stress hormones when we exercise as well. So, um, ventilation by that I mean like talking to someone, like talking out your stress with a trusted friend or somebody you feel safe with, a family member, a clergy yani, or like a therapist. It's important for us to talk about our stressors and talk about what we're going through. Very important. We don't want to bottle that stuff in. Um, Prioritize sleep and rest. It's not easy to do when we're stressed, but it's very important to look at your sleep hygiene and how that's going for you. And even if you could just take, like, if it's possible in your day, to take even a little cat nap, if it's needed. This all will help your stress levels. Proper nutrition. Um, Believe it or not, like a high sugar diet or a high processed food diet actually contributes to more cortisol production. So our diets, believe it or not, can actually make us more stressful over time. And so it's worth looking at your diet and like seeing, where can you make changes. I know that there's also like things you can supplement with that will help stress. I usually recommend ashwagandha if it's okay with your physician, that you take it. It's an herb, and it's supposed to lower a little bit of the cortisol levels. There's teas and warm drinks tend to like mellow us out, like chamomile tea, things like that. Things that promote, that slowness, little bit of relaxation. Um, Time management. This is a huge issue with a lot of my clients that I've seen over the years. Like sometimes we are causing our own stress without realizing it. Like when I was saying like we're overscheduled, we're overbooked, like sometimes we don't realize that we're not making time in our schedules to rest, to go to the gym or take a walk, or talk with a friend. Like sometimes we just literally don't have the time in the day, and so we look at like what your time management is, and how we can maybe change it up a little bit, improve it so that you can balance your life a little bit better so that you're not so stressed. um and positive mindset, of course. um I think as Muslims, this is definitely part of the reason I think Muslims are, a lot more resilient in a way than many other of my clients, because the spiritual piece of our lives really does help, manage a lot of our stressors. And, we know as Muslims that stress is part of life, and that we're here, under a test of Allah, and that there are things that are going to pressure us and test us, and that we draw on Allah and we have tawakkul in Allah, and we can make prayer and dua for ourselves, and practice gratitude and things like that. These all help stress. Um, so I think that's really important as far as also self-care. Um, And then finally, breath work and meditation. And these are, I have this whole podcast I did on my Instagram, if you guys want to check it out, like on mindfulness. I talk extensively about this, but breath work and meditation are very, very cool when it comes to stress management. especially the breath work too, because the meditation piece, some people are not super comfortable with it, and it's hard to sit still like that, which I understand. It's really not, but for some people, I think it might be. For most people, I think it's fine, but breath work, everyone I think can do. Just taking a nice deep breath. Inhale through the nose, hold it for a few seconds, and then exhale slowly through the mouth. If we all do that together, you do it right now with me, and then hold your breath, and just by doing that, you take like a 10-second vacation. And believe it or not, like when you take a deep breath like that, your cortisol will drop, and oxygen is now in your brain, and things are working a little bit better, and they're more regulated. I know during COVID, I practiced progressive muscle relaxation techniques with some of my clients that were stressed during COVID, where you tighten all your muscles really tight, and you just hold it like that for 10 seconds, and then you just slowly release all your muscles. And if you do that a couple of times, what happens is you actually reset your nervous system. So that will also help with stress management. So I hope that was helpful. And finally, when is it time to see a professional? Well, if it becomes so unmanageable, your stress, that it's leading to, symptoms of anxiety and depression, um, or when your daily functioning is affected, you can tell like you're not up to par at all. It's been a while. Um, and you can see that on a daily basis, you're struggling. Or when unhealthy coping skills or coping mechanisms actually become a habit, you're starting to have some addictions to things. That might be a good time to see a professional. So, inshallah, uh, I think we can all, make dua for each other and ourselves to have Allah help us with the stressful circumstances that we're all facing. And I have my contact information down there if you want to reach out or ask any questions, or just reach out for support. I'm here for you, inshallah. And that's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sal. This was very, very informative. So I see that you have your contact information on here, which is great. But before we share also your Instagram, I'll make sure I'll share that. Do we have anyone who has any questions for Dr. Sally about any coping mechanisms, anything that she went over, any have questions about? You can go off mute and then ask any questions, or you can type in the chat and I will read it for her.
Assalamu alaikum. I came in late. This was recorded, right? So we will get the recording, inshallah.
I believe so, sister. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to take myself off mute. Yes, there is. I will be sharing the recordings. I'm going to try to also put it on our YouTube channel. It's at MPG Muslims. You can also watch it on there. Dr. Sally does have her contact information on the screen, and you can also reach out to her on her Instagram, which is self-care spa Sally, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So she also has Instagram where you can direct message her or book for any of her services. And again, having a therapist, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Sally, you don't necessarily have to have an actual disease. It's better to start early just to talk to someone, right?
Yes, absolutely. When we were talking about that ventilation piece, talking, venting, it's therapeutic. It's absolutely therapeutic. We all need that, actually. Yeah.
That's great. So I really want, on behalf of the Muslim Professional Group, I really want to thank you so much for your time and your efforts.
My pleasure.
Thank you. This has been very informative and educational session, and I really enjoyed listening to everything that you had shared. So Jazakallah khair, and thank you to everyone who had attended with us, and have a great evening.
Great evening, everyone. Tasbih khair. Good night. Thank you. Bye, Lemia.
Bye-bye, Dr. Sally. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.